Welcome in to Bet the Edge, the college football edition. I'm Brad Thomas here with Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell, and a special guest, Max Chadwick, co-host of the PFF College Football Show. First, I'm going to go to you, Max. Thanks for joining the show. We always like to start the show off, kind of talk about any takeaways from last week. It could be anything in the college football landscape. Any takeaways you had?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. And Eric, I totally forgot. We actually at the combine hung out at the bars after one of the nights together. So it's good to see you again, man. I'm happy to be on with you guys. I'm a huge fan of I'm a huge fan of all of you guys. Honestly, it's cool to be talking ball with you guys. But yeah, it's just one of the most chaotic seasons of college football that I can personally remember. Right? I think a lot of people go back to that 2007 season as one of the most chaotic of all time, just in terms of how many top 10 upsets we've had this year. We're on pace with that 2007 season. So it seems like we have a new number one team every week. This week it's Oregon. We'll see what it is next week, honestly. It's been an insane year of college football in this 12-team era now with NIL, the transfer portal booming more than ever before. It's really made college football a lot more parity than we've ever seen before in it. So I've just been really enjoying the season. I can't wait for the second half of the year.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Not exciting for me as an Alabama guy. I'm going to go ahead and say that. Tired of losing ranked games as the top 10 team. Vaughn, any takeaways from last week?
Well, honestly, my takeaways are important because now that you've hung out with Eric, please tell us, what was the craziest thing Eric did? Because I've been with this guy like 5-6 times, and I mean, he's a wild man.
I didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything. He was great. I was a fan of him before, so I think I told him at the bar. Like we had a few beers together, and I was like, "Dude, I'm a huge fan of yours." And we're going back and forth about college players and who we like in the draft and all that. No, nothing crazy. Honestly, I came away from that like, "Oh, Eric Froton's a man." Honestly, that was my main takeaway. So
it was just all nerding out about college football. There's nothing salacious that you want to hear, Vaughn. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it was very PG. I'm sorry.
We all have Eric Froton stories, right? Like Eric Froton running us on the field to go celebrate with Ohio State at Notre Dame. Like every time we hang out with Eric, there's a great story. Next thing you know, we're best friends with Ryan Day's best friends. Like, oh man, let's get into it. I'm excited to talk about this game. Number 21, Missouri at number 15, Alabama. The Crimson Tide are a 14-point favorite in the total set at 55.5. Max, go ahead with your handicap of this game.
Yeah, you look at it right now, I kind of like Alabama to take care of business in this game. I know it's a 14-point spread. I have it as Alabama winning by 13, so maybe Missouri does cover, but I'd be more surprised if Alabama doesn't take care of business in this game, honestly. I think they're coming off that bad loss to Tennessee. Obviously, Jalen Monroe has looked like a shell of himself in the last couple of weeks, but Brady Cook even more so. I'm more worried about him. It doesn't really make sense why Missouri's offense is not clicking the way it was last year, right? They brought back Brady Cook. They brought back their top 5 receivers, including Luther Burden III, who a lot of people thought was the best receiver in college football entering the year. Their offensive line is still really good, in my opinion. And they brought back their star offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore, who I thought could have been getting head coaching offers last year. And now, even though you brought back all that, it doesn't look anything like it did last year. I think it's a lot to do with Brady Cook just missing throws, and now he's got an ankle injury he's got to deal with as well. I think Alabama at home with their backs against the wall. I think the loser of this game is officially eliminated from the college football playoff race. So both teams' backs are against the wall. I trust Jalen Monroe and the Alabama offense, though, to take care of business against Missouri at home.
We've kind of been waiting for this Missouri offense to have this explosion game, right? It's one thing to do it against UMass and another thing to not do it against an Auburn. We know Brady Cook, like you said, hasn't been perfect. He missed time. He went to the hospital in the middle of the game when the commentators kept saying he's getting his ankle taped, came back in, did win that game. Initially, I had Missouri plus 14. My number's closer to actually 10.5 in this. I thought that'd been a fair line on Alabama. With Nate Noel being out, I have to pass. I have to just say I can't bet this game. But there's a lot of reasons if you like Missouri at their current form, there's a lot of reasons to like them, right? There's a couple numbers that were intriguing to me. Number one, Kalen DeBoer, and this is from his time at Washington and Alabama, 4-7 against this. Excuse me. That stat, let's go ahead and cut that stat out. Let's go to the next one because I actually want to talk about the defensive numbers first. So Kalen DeBoer, when he played, when he coached at Alabama and Washington, covering these 10-point spreads didn't happen, right? Only, I think it was 2 games when he was a 10-point favorite or more. They actually won by 10 or more, so covered the spread in that one. But a lot of it has to do with their defensive woes. You look at the numbers for Alabama, they say they're not in that bad of shape, right? Like defensively, they played pretty good against Tennessee. They're first in defensive success rate against the pass, 4th in EPA margin, right? Like, why is that not translating? Well, if you go a little bit deeper, there's 2 areas. One area that you absolutely have to talk about. Number one, run defense. You might get fooled in thinking they're a top 10, top 20 unit if you just look at just the metrics. But no, they are 41st in opportunity rate, 130th in power success rate, and even more alarming, 99th in stuff rate. Those are not Nick Saban-esque numbers. That's one thing you can always count on the defensive line for Alabama. They don't allow those big chunk runs, right? But they do allow you to kind of pick them apart and move the chains. And then when they actually get those stops and have a 3rd and long, they go exclusively to man. This is a defense that runs man close to 53%. When you think about the country average is like close to 38%, and they're getting beat. I think Missouri does have the weapons on the outside and like a Luther Burden to kind of move the sticks in those really tough 3rd and longs. But without Nate Noel, that run defense issue kind of becomes obsolete, and it's played at Bryant-Denny. It's a pass from me. Vaughn, do you have any action for this game?
Yeah, I think the action should be on the total once again. I mean, the easiest bet of last week was Alabama-Tennessee under we talked about, right? And I think it's kind of we run it back here. We're in the meat and the potatoes of the schedule. And Max said, like, the loser of this game is out. College football playoff race. So we know that every possession now is a little more critical. The fourth quarter, we want to run that clock. You don't want to give everybody another opportunity of getting the football back. And you mentioned a lot of the stuffing stats there. Nate Noel is out for Missouri. We're taping this, Wednesday afternoon around 4 o'clock. About 10 minutes before the show started, we got the news that he's out. So we're expecting the spread to even move in Alabama's favor. That's what I'm expecting at least. And Alabama's won 4 straight by 19 plus against Missouri, but they haven't played since 2020. So obviously you can't hang your hat on that too much. Unfamiliarity, the college football playoff, everything going on right now with these two programs. I think the under is the best bet, Eric, but I'm sure you have a prop in this game that's probably more fun than taking the under in this contest.
Well, all betting on these sort of college football games are fun, in my opinion. But yes, I always have a prop with Alabama 5-2 to the over. So they have been sort of breeding those sort of shootout type games. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Tennessee game notwithstanding last week, but offensively, they've been they've been Alabama, and they've taken on the identity of that Kalen DeBoer sort of an offense. The passing offense, they're 80% adjusted completion rates, the best in the country, averaging 8.4 yards per dropback. That's 9th, and ranking 15th in passing explosiveness. And that's an important metric because we're going to talk about Missouri. And, are they 6-1? Yeah, but they have a 4.7 second order win total, which takes away 1.3 wins. All their wins, they've been close. They're not blowing teams out here. And defensively, you have to remember, they're good on a down-to-down basis against the pass. 34% passing success rate. That's 10th best in the country. They're ranked 28th in EPA per dropback. However, they are extremely prone to the big play, rank 103rd in passing explosiveness. Now, against this Alabama offense, as we discussed, simply the number 3 S&P plus rated offense in the country, I think that means they're going to go hunting against this Missouri pass defense. I think that means the sensational 17-year-old freshman Ryan Williams, 67.5 receiving yards is his line. Last game against Tennessee, he got an absurd 20 targets. 2-0. Not 12, 20 targets. And with 60% of his targets this season coming at least 10 plus yards downfield, 31% coming between 10 and 19, the other 29% coming 20 plus yards downfield. We've seen the acrobatic nature of Mr. Williams. I think Alabama is going to want to make a statement here against the Missouri team that I feel is completely over their heads. And as Max alluded to with Brady Cook, I mean, we have just seen a regression from him. And with Missouri's run game not having the effectiveness it did last year with Cody Schrader, Nate Noel out, even though he's small. You have Marcus Carroll, former Georgia State running back, who's coming in to take over. I mean, I just think there's a lot of disappointing and troubling metrics we're looking at here. Brady Cook, while he's only been pressured 24.5% of the time, that's the 23rd best in the country, according to their offensive line, he's getting sacked 25% of the time. That's 101st sack rate in the country. I see red flags all over the place. Give me the Ryan Williams over, and I certainly lean Alabama here.
Yeah, listen, Alabama had played 2 really strong defensive lines in back-to-back games. Now they get a little reprieve in this game, and they're back to being at home. Let's move over to the next game. Number 5, Texas, 18.5-point favorite at the ranked 25th Vanderbilt, total set at 53.5. Oh man, what a life it is for Texas. For anybody who called Georgia to win last week, congratulations. And I think a lot of the handicap from that game was Texas hadn't really played anybody. And Georgia kind of battle tested there. It got so bad for Texas here where they ended up having to temporarily bench Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning in there, kind of had pressure in his face the whole time. Let me go ahead. I don't have a bet for this. I leaned Diego Pavia under 177 passing yards. I need it to be a little closer to 185, so I'm not going to bet it. They play really slow. They run the ball a ton, 116th, and rush rate over expected. But I need to ask Max here his thoughts on this game because I did see the PFF Team of the Week have a ton of Texas offensive linemen when it felt like there was pressure in Quinn Ewers' face all game.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about that, and I think Calvin Banks Jr. got a lot of flack for that game, and Cameron Williams, I don't think had a great game either. But Calvin Banks Jr. actually, I thought had a really good game. The problem was Quinn Ewers' pocket presence in that game was a disaster, honestly. And he was taking deep pockets, like he was putting Calvin Banks in bad situations. And I know Banks statistically let up 3 sacks, like 2 of them were Quinn Ewers' fault, honestly. One of them he ran right into the defender when Banks was giving him a clean pocket. The other one, he took way too deep of a drop back, which allowed the defender to just go all the way around and get Quinn Ewers. So I think Quinn Ewers' pocket presence was the big fault in that game. And that's ultimately the biggest storyline going into this one is what does Quinn Ewers look like, right? Because the last 2 weeks, I know they blew out Oklahoma, but that was more due to Texas's defense just shutting down what's been an objectively horrible Oklahoma offense this year. Quinn Ewers didn't look good in that Oklahoma game. And this past week against Georgia, he had the worst game of his career. In fact, he had 6 turnover-worthy plays. That's tied for the most by a Power 4 quarterback over the last 4 years, honestly. So by all accounts, he was the worst game of his career, coming off a really bad game the week before as well. And the problem is, not only are you having 2 bad games in a row at a program like Texas, where if you're having a bad game, they're going to let you know and want you off the field immediately. The problem is you also have the best backup in college football right behind him, in Arch Manning. Manning as well has all the hype in the world around him. So Quinn Ewers, I think, has an opportunity this week because Vanderbilt's defense by no means is as good as Georgia's or as good as Oklahoma's. So there's an opportunity here for Quinn Ewers to bounce back this week. But if he still looks like what he's looked like the last couple of weeks, if I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm pulling him quickly, honestly, and putting in Arch Manning because it's worrisome what Quinn Ewers has looked like the last couple of weeks, but I'm willing to give him a shot in this game because Vanderbilt's pass defense is below average, while Oklahoma's and Georgia's is very, very good. So that's why the Quinn Ewers deserves a shot in this game. But if it's still a Quinn Ewers problem, I don't think Steve Sarkisian will have any problem going to Arch Manning as a new quarterback.
I agree. I think Arch Manning should have been the quarterback from halftime on in that game. And we talked about, Brad, a couple weeks ago where I was in Colorado and I was like, I placed Arch Manning Heisman ticket. And you're like, why? Basically, like rip it up and throw it away. And I'm like, maybe he brings some life back to this team, but probably not. I don't think they had a chance. I mean, Carson Beck let us all down last week through 3 interceptions. That Texas defense, so tough still. And I think they're going to be tough here because you mentioned, Brad, that they play slow, Vanderbilt. And I think that comes into play here. The under is the best play, under 53.5. Vanderbilt scored 20 on Kentucky, 24 on Ball State the last 2 weeks. Why they came away victorious, it doesn't make me confident in backing them here to cover this spread. With Texas having 2 of the best quarterbacks, like Max said, I mean, I think this situation here where Texas should cover the spread, but I feel much comfortable in the under here. In a game where Vanderbilt, enjoyed being ranked for the short period that you are, because this is probably going to be the only time they are this season, Eric. So what are you on here?
Yeah, man, Vanderbilt just seems to be able to breed these close games, don't they? I mean, even against Ball State, who has one of the worst defenses in the country, they still only beat them by 10 points. But then, you go and Kentucky, 2013, Alabama, 40-35, Missouri, 27-30, 36-32, Georgia State. They just seem to breed these close games. You just can't get away from this Vanderbilt team. And a lot of it just has to do with simple execution on offense. There's nothing sexy about this team or anything. They're allowing 115th pressure rates, 36% pressure rate. Somehow, Diego Pavia is just pure magic being able to navigate that pocket. You got to give it to him. But as you mentioned, very slow pace for Vanderbilt, 126, only 10.4 drives per game. So you can see that what they want to do is execute Mount those long drives, have good oh gosh, what's the offensive coordinator's name? But you saw what they did against Alabama, where they had everything planned out, and they've done a great job of their scheming. So I do think they can hang around in this game. I guess my concern is with Texas is, coming off the UGA game, obviously it was a disaster. Only gained 259 total yards, lost 3 fumbles and an interception. Like, you can't have that kind of ball security. And they had benched Jaden Blue the week before for fumble problems. So, they go with Trey Wisner. He didn't have any issues, but, with Vandy, 5-2 against the spread, 5-2 the over. I can't help but lean Vandy with the points, but my big play that I want to have in this game is, we talked about him, Quinn Ewers. He's listed at 257.5 for passing yardage, and that's not something he's really been clearing this year. He cleared 257 one time. It was against Colorado State. Against Michigan, 246, but they didn't really have to do much. I don't think they're going to have to do much again here. Threw for 211 against Georgia, got pulled. Threw for 199 against Oklahoma. Threw for 185 against UTSA, then got hurt. I think we will see Manning, and we've seen him in just about every game this year. Even if he gets a couple different series, that will cut into things. You have a slow pace from Vanderbilt. I just think there's a lot of question marks to go into what will happen with Quinn Ewers in this game. Do I think he'll be fine? Yeah. I mean, they'll probably win, but it's certainly in play that he doesn't play the entire game, be it because of injury or performance-related reasons, because it's happened multiple times already this year. Give him the under 257.5 on Ewers.
Yeah, Tim Beck, offensive coordinator. But it's kind of funny about this game. I want to add one more thing before we move on here. You talked about how Vanderbilt was ready against Alabama, and Texas, when they played against Georgia, Georgia hadn't figured out their running game for 7 games. And then you watch ETN's just ripping off run after run, hole after hole created by that offensive line. I do think Vanderbilt will be able to run the ball a ton. I couldn't quite get into all the way to the number just because, Texas off a loss could come with a little fury. Sarkisian, it just feels like he has the fire in his eye after that game. Watching his press conference, we'll see what happens there. But let's move over to another ranked SEC match. Number 8, LSU at number 14, Texas A&M. Texas A&M right now set at -2.5, total 53.5. Max, can you go ahead and break this one down for us?
Yeah, I'm taking LSU money line here. I think LSU is the better team. I understand it's at Kyle Field, but there's this. Connor Wigman is the most confusing quarterback in college football, guys. So when I was diving into the stats for our preview yesterday, usually your grade when you're kept clean, when there's no pressure on you, is way higher than when you're under pressure for obvious reasons, right? You have more time in the pocket to find your open receivers downfield. And when you're under pressure, obviously you're rushed, right? You're trying to find guys, you're trying to find a lifeline, you're trying to run for your life back there. Connor Wigman is complete opposite of that. He has an 81 grade under pressure this year. That's 4th among all quarterbacks in college football. When he's kept clean, he has a 56.3 grade, which is the 3rd worst in the country and the worst in the Power 4. His grade under pressure is 25 points higher than when he's kept clean. That makes no earthly sense at all. He's the most perplexing quarterback in the nation. And it's weird because LSU's pass rush has been really good this year. It won them that game, and Ole Miss game, they did really well in the pass rush. Other games have had really good pass rush as well. But I don't know if that'll work here in the Connor Wigman game, but I think it'll do enough to bother him. And I can't trust Connor Wigman right now. That's what it really boils down to me. And I can trust Garrett Nussmeier. And I know Texas A&M's got a really good defensive line, but on the contrast to that, LSU's got a really good offensive line as well. So I think that'll be a heavyweight battle in the trenches. And I just simply trust Garrett Nussmeier a heck of a lot more than I trust Connor Wigman right now. I know A&M's got a decent run game, but LSU also has a pretty decent run game. I just think the better team is getting points. I understand it's on the road right now, but I felt the same way as I did in the Notre Dame game going into, where I thought Notre Dame was a better team going into Kyle Field, and they were the underdog, and they won that game. I kind of feel the same way about this LSU one, so I'm taking the LSU money line to beat Texas A&M in this one.
I went back and forth on this a couple of times, and I just kind of had to trust the numbers and tell the story what the numbers were saying to me. I really wanted to find a way to get to LSU, right? I went with Texas A&M in their first tough home game of the season against Notre Dame, and then now I'm going back to Texas A&M here, going to trust that they protect their home field against LSU. There's 2 really glaring things that stand out for me, and I'll add a third after these 2. First one, early down success on defense, not very good. EPA margin 76 and on first and second down. Why that's important in this game, You talked about not being able to trust Wegman, right? I don't think anyone wants to trust Connor Wegman, especially when it becomes third and long or even third and medium. But LSU's defense has been pretty bad on first and second down, allowing a lot of success in those areas. Number two, third and fourth down, they're just as bad, 73rd in the country in third and fourth down success there, allowing those plays to be converted, allowing those chains to be moved, and not putting as much stress on Connor Wegman. While they have been pretty good against the run so far this season in LSU, I do believe Le'Veon Moss is just going to get the volume, the amount of carries, where it's not going to be the game that's determined by Connor Wegman, right? Like, they're not going to say, hey, Connor Wegman, go ahead and just piece them apart and see what you can do, right? I'm sure he'll have a decent game, but it's going to be Le'Veon Moss carrying the ball 20 plus times in this game, and him basically trusting how good their offensive line is against the LSU defensive line. What's really funny about this game is, what's funny about the last game LSU played, I was on LSU, and as the game got closer, I wanted to see how Arkansas could mess that game up, right? Arkansas decided to just abandon the run. Jaquinton Jackson, I think, touched the ball out of the backfield like 5-6 times, and they've done that in their losses despite, the game not being out of reach. I don't think Texas A&M is going to do that. I think they're going to stick to what they're good at, right? They run the ball a ton, 117th rush rate over expected, and they're going to end up coming out with the win. I need them to cover the 2.5, and I think they get it done. Eric, do you have any plays in this game?
Yeah, when it comes to Texas A&M, first off, 2-5 against the spread. So even though their defense has been, pretty competitive, this 4-3 to the over as well. Offensively, as you alluded to, very strong run game for them, averaging 5.7 yards per carry, 25th in rushing success rate, and 3.2 yards after contact. And a lot of that has to do with Le'Veon Moss, which we got an awesome 70.5 opening on the rushing line for him last week, and he crushed that. It's up to 85.5 again this week, but that was we like those openings. But with Connor Wegman, as Max very, very smart, astutely pointed out, 58% of his throws he's completing. In terms of Texas A&M, he's completing 62%, but with a 3-to-4 ratio. Last game against Mississippi State has one of the worst, if not the worst, pass defense in the Power Four. I mean, they rank 133rd in passing success rate, 134th. You're completing 73% of their passes against Mississippi State. Wegman couldn't look good against them. If you can't look, competent against Mississippi State, completed 15 of 25, a 1-to-2 ratio with 4 turnover-worthy plays. As Max alluded to, we will give out the PFF, a 42.6 PFF passing grade. There you go, Max. For Connor Wegman last game. So just all these metrics are pointing to, even though LSU's pass defense, understandably is not as bad as they were last year, it's still not incredible by any means. 45th in passing explosive, 105th in passing success rate allowed. I like Caden Durham, running back for LSU. Real reason why is he's at 50.5 receiving yards. Last game, he got 21 carries out of 33 out of that backfield against Arkansas. Went for 101 and 3 touchdowns. He's clearly surpassed Josh Williams, who's just sort of that old codger, that senior who's hanging around. They got to call him the starter. Caleb Jackson at 245 pounds is just not explosive enough. Caleb Durham has taken over that room. With that kind of volume in the 15 to 20 rush range at 50.5 rushing yards, I don't see any way he doesn't beat that, given the fact that, as we discussed, Texas A&M, exceptional pass D, but 117th in yards per successful rush allowed. I think that's where they're going to get beat, and I think that's where LSU attacks them. So give me the over on Caden Durham's rushing.
Vaughn, last season, it felt like you can just auto bet any LSU over and make cash, right? They were 92% to the over. This year, 2-5 to the over. Do you think that, it's kind of like a buy low spot for this total, or how are you viewing the total in this game?
Yeah, I've been sticking to totals recently because the sides haven't been good to me. And when I looked at the side of this one, I mean, you guys know I love my historical data when it comes to matchups. And the home team's won 7 straight meetings between these two teams. So automatically they maybe want to go with the Aggies, but I still hate the Aggies since week 1 lost to Notre Dame. So when Max said he was on Notre Dame, I'm like, I want to take LSU here. That's all I had to hear. He knows this team. But I think that, both teams have won close games all year. And I think that comes to a factor here because, if we're talking, lunch money or ladders later, overtime could be won in this game. I could see this game coming down to the final possession and potentially going to overtime. So I like the over in here. I mean, Connor Wegman in this offense put up 75 points in the last 2 games. I don't know how. You guys have heard all the stats already listening in, but it's the second most back-to-back points they put up all year, and LSU can put up points, and their defense doesn't scare me. So I do think it's a buy low spot, Brad. 53 is a good number because, 54, 55 start to be key numbers in football, so you might want to get it now before it climbs up a little higher.
Yeah, I'm still mad about that first game of the season. Let's move to the next game. A game I'm actually really excited about. And if you told me preseason that I would just be licking my chops for Notre Dame versus Navy, I would tell you you're absolutely insane. But number 12, Notre Dame takes on Navy, number 24 in the country. Shout out to the service academies. Notre Dame, 12.5-point favorite. Total set at 52.5. I did write this game up. I wrote this game up on NBCSports.com. If you guys are looking for more betting information, make sure you check out the website there. And, at first I was leaning Navy. I was all over Navy. Notre Dame have owned this matchup historically, winning the last 6. They played 94 times, mind you. But then I went back and I looked deeper into Navy's schedule. Outside of that Memphis game, where are we really excited about this Navy team, right? Like, they're picking up good wins, right? Like, if you beat a team 38-11 when they beat Temple, great. You beat Charlotte 51-17, amazing. Air Force 34-7, but they're not good teams. So I didn't know really what to draw from that. But I went back and forth, like I said, and I ended up leaving this one alone. There's a couple things that are kind of interesting when you think about this game. Hilliard's playing, Harvard is playing phenomenal for Navy. He has 888 yards through the air, 10 touchdowns. On the ground, another 621 yards and another 10 touchdowns. Both teams are really good at covering, great at covering. But I actually do think the weakness that you don't see often from especially from a service academy is their run defense. Success rate not where I want it to be. EPA margin not where I want it to be. I looked to see if I can find an angle how I could take Jeremiah Love in this game is over. I couldn't do it, but I do think between Love and Riley Leonard, they find success on the ground. It could be one of those situations where, it happened to Syracuse earlier in the season, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but where we saw a lot of success with Syracuse playing kind of really nobody, and then they had that one game against Georgia Tech where they played against a team that, put up a little spunk defensively and they kind of faltered. That could happen to Navy in this game. So naturally, I want to just take the points with Navy, but I end up passing ultimately. Max, you have any thoughts on this one?
You took the words right out of my mouth, honestly. I don't know what the props are for Riley Leonard rushing and Jeremiah Love rushing, but I'll take the over on whatever it is, honestly. I think that's the avenue here for Notre Dame to win this game is with that run game. Because like you mentioned, Navy's run D has been like average in the nation this year. And you also have to keep in mind they played a group of 5 schedule, so they're probably well below that as well. And you've got a Notre Dame offense that is so predicated on that run game because they have an elite offensive line in terms of run blocking. In terms of pass protection, there's a lot of issues with that Notre Dame offensive line, but run blocking, they've been actually really good. I think top 25 run blocking grade in the country so far. I think they're 7th in EPA per run so far this year. Jeremiah Love has broken a tackle on 45% of his carries, which I believe is like the 2nd or 3rd best in college football. Riley Leonard has some of the most rushing yards by any Power 4 quarterback this year. They're going to want to impose their will on this Navy run D. And the way for Navy to pull off the upset is to win on early downs, make Riley Leonard beat them through the air, because Riley Leonard, as great as he is on the ground, he's not as efficient through the air. Honestly, he's like 99th in passing grade so far this year, which obviously is nowhere close to the NFL quarterback that a lot of people had him pegged as going into the year. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think the rushing total of Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard, that's the avenue I want to play here. I don't love the spread or the money line or the over-under or anything like that. I kind of like the rushing totals for those two because I really think that's the way they're going to go and try to win that game. And a quick fun fact about that 10 passing touchdowns you mentioned for Blake Horvath, the school record is 13 for Navy. So he is 3 passing touchdowns away from the school record, and we're only halfway through the season. He's going to smash the school record for passing touchdowns. So it's really weird for that triple option offense at Navy to actually have any element of a passing game, and they don't even have an element. They have a legit threat that Notre Dame just can't send 10 guys in the box and stop the triple option. No, you got to worry about Blake Horvath beating you over the top as well. So that stat to me was crazy when I saw that as well. But yeah, it's going to be a fun game, and I really like the overs. I don't even know what the numbers are. I'm sure Eric will tell us in a second, but whatever the overs are, Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard rushing, I'll take the over on it.
Yeah, it's Jeremiah Love's at 64, 65.5, depending on where you're shopping it at. And the issue with him, it isn't so much on the per carry basis. It's more how they're deploying him, because he's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. You saw him catch 3 passes, 57 yards the last game. Against Louisville, he caught 5 passes. So they really do like to flex him out a lot and use him in creative ways, with Jadarian Price coming in and getting those secondary snaps. That's the only issue you really have here with Love is just his usage rate in the run phase. At 36 yards last game, 53 against Stanford, 34 against Louisville, 60 against Miami, Ohio. Hasn't broken the 65.5 number since Purdue, but that's just because of the dual backfield sort of thing. And because, as you mentioned, Riley Leonard takes a lot of the air out of that room with the rushing yards. When it comes to Notre Dame and what they do when throwing the ball, they're objectively terrible. 131st in passing explosiveness, 130th in completions of 20-plus yards, and they're averaging 4.1 air yards per completion. So it's a very short yardage-oriented sort of a set that they're running, and they're not really stretching the field at all downfield with Riley Leonard because they can't trust them to do that. Leonard would be my lean here at 53.5. I mean, gosh, he went 63 last game. Excuse me, he went 51 last game, 31, 52, but then 143, 100, 63. So he's been right around that number. It's just a matter of how they want to attack this and how much time they have, because as we know, Navy tends to shorten these games too. They run the ball a lot as well. So that's something certainly to factor in, is how many drives we'll actually be getting. Given, as Brad mentioned, the wide disparity between the level of competition between Navy and Notre Dame, I have to lean Notre Dame with that 11.5, simply because we haven't seen Navy play anybody better than Memphis. And Memphis, they beat them, but gosh, they scored 44 points on them. I got to lean Notre Dame here and Riley Leonard's rushing with my man Max.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm doing a little line reading right now on Riley Leonard, and I found it interesting that for him to get 80-plus yards is only plus 180, the same as Jeremiah Love, and Jeremiah Love's yard line is 10 yards higher. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this either, because Alshon Jenti is the only guy I've seen have a line of 200-plus rushing yards for a game this season for a ladder.
That's ever. No. This is the only time anyone's had 200-plus rushing yards in a game. Ever.
Well,
no one's ever been lined that close.
Riley Leonard's is 175.5 at the highest ladder you could take him. I find that very odd in this game. So he might break off 2 long ones. Jeremiah Love also, his ladder reaches 200 yards for this game. So if I'm seeing the ladder for the rushing props be that high, it makes me lean the under here. And it totally course corrects what I was going to say. Because I actually like the first half over in this game because of the offense Max and everyone else spoke about. Navy totally looks different. Service Academy unders, dead. R.I.P. We miss you so much.
The past.
You're gone. This Navy team changed it. 52.5 might be a steal here. The first half over has actually cashed in 4 of the last 5 meetings between Navy and Notre Dame. Now you got this Navy offense that is 10 times possibly better. I think there's potential here to play the first half over. If we see the first quarter over 10.5 cash, we'll get a good live hedge as well. Maybe take a first half under live and try and get the middle there opportunity. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to back a side here. Notre Dame, it looks too easy. And I'm like 2-7 all time as a secret betting Notre Dame football. So you're not going to hear me talk their spread the rest of the season, guys.
Vaughn, to touch on your totals here, I've been doing this sicko thing. I know you've probably seen it in the Discord where I've just been waiting, and then live betting the under and just keep progressively live betting the under in these Service Academy games. Army destroyed that last week, right? Like that strategy was blown up. Someone goes, Brad, are you going to do the same thing against Navy? They scored like 24 points in the first quarter. I was like, I'm going to wait till the fourth quarter. Didn't score a single point in the fourth quarter, neither team, them or Charlotte. So it is really stressful. But if you are sitting at your home and you're watching these beautiful Service Academies play, just wait till the third and fourth quarter and then start betting the under. Don't bet it pregame because these teams have been scoring. With that said, I want to thank Max. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking your time out of your day, dropping more knowledge. The more knowledge, the better. Can you let people know where to find you on social media and what you're working on with PFF?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on my new Twitter at CFB Max Chadwick because my old one got hacked, unfortunately. So that's my new Twitter. Yeah, awful. It's awful. I'm an idiot. I clicked on a link that I thought that I was investigating for copyright for real by Twitter. I got cleared. They said I was all good. And then 2 days later, I got a DM saying, hey, we investigated you again. We found that you did violate copyright. We're going to delete your account in 24 hours if you do not fill out this form. And I clicked on the form, and then it hacked my Twitter from there. So they got me. They got me. They got me good on that one. So it's my new Twitter. But and also, I host the PFF Football Show. We're live every Tuesdays, and for Tuesday for our preview show, and every Sunday for our review show. We're going live, and also we post like a video in between those as well, just a miscellaneous video on college football as well. So check out the PFF College Football Show on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate that.
Glad you got your Twitter back, man. Thanks for coming on.
I just followed you, so you have another follower to get back to you.
There we go.
That's right.
The slow build back up, guys. I appreciate it.
That's right.
No problem.
Resubscribe to our friend Max. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, let's get into the ladder plays. Last week is kind of amazing because, on these ladder plays, I didn't have one to start it off, right? Like I was scrambling, went with Klubnik, and he cashed. So I'm going to go again with another quarterback. And this one is stinky. It's a stinky ladder. If you were to tell me before the season that I was taking Thomas Castellanos, 250 plus passing yards, I would say you are out of your ever loving mind. However, he did hit it once, right? He hit it once when he threw the ball 30 times against Virginia. Now he's going against a team that just allowed Cam Ward to just piece them up, right? They allow a ton of explosive plays in Louisville. Louisville right now, 97th in defensive success rate against the pass. Boston College should be playing from behind, right? If you're going against a team, you're playing from behind, Friday Night Lights, this game is historically a crazy one. There was something like 80 points scored in the last game they played. Just only points to just more passing opportunities, right? And with Castellanos, he's not bad when he throws the ball, not terrible when he has to throw the ball. It's more of when he doesn't have to throw the ball and he doesn't know what to do. Whether should I run the ball or should I throw the ball? And that's when he starts making the mistakes. So I took Thomas Castellanos. That was my favorite ladder. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later. Vaughn, go ahead and give me your ladder play.
Yeah, I wasn't actually in love with my ladders this week. So I'll try to get real creative here. Now that I've been listening to Max and you guys talk about Riley Leonard, I kind of want to steal Riley Leonard 80 plus rushing yards at plus 200, plus 198. So yeah, I'm just going to steal that one if you don't mind. But as far as what I did come up with, Woody Marks, first touchdown, Friday Night Lights special, USC versus Rutgers. He's a USC running back. He scored the most touchdowns on the team, tied for 5, but he hasn't actually scored their first touchdown since week 1 against LSU. Just have an odd feeling that he might get it. His odds are way shorter than everyone else's. So I took a snack on that, and I paired it with Quinshon Judkins of Ohio State, plus 425, him against Nebraska. Obviously, they'll come out firing there. It's hard to pick between any of the top 3 or 4 options at Ohio State. But I like the odds at plus 425 and parlayed those two at 1,700. So that's what I came up with. And now that I convinced myself that LSU and Texas A&M, Eric, are going to overtime, I might throw like $5 on that at plus 1,550 I saw. So consider all 4 of those my ladder plays, I guess.
The good thing about Riley Leonard is, there's no shame in Notre Dame's game. I saw this happen against Georgia Tech, where they get like decent chunks on first down, and then they run the ball 3 straight times with Riley Leonard. All he has to do is break one of those bad boys, and you're absolutely cooking.
That is what Riley Leonard does. It's truly the case. With my first ladder, I am going to go with Ohio State wide receiver Carnell Tate. And if you are lucky enough to go and bet Mr. Tate for 50-plus receiving yards, just 50-plus receiving yards, you're getting almost 3-1 money, plus 285. Okay, I don't know how they're letting this go this high at 50 receiving yards with Tate. Let's go through the numbers here. Week 1 against Akron, catches 4 passes, 58 yards. Week 2, Western Michigan, 3 for 45. Marshall, 4 for 64. Michigan State, 3 for 52. So first 4 games, he's beaten it 3 times. Last week against Oregon, he plays every single snap, all right? No other wide receiver besides Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, or Emeka Egbuka took a single snap against Oregon. Carnell Tate's the wide receiver 3. He only gets one. He only got caught one pass of 13 yards. So it's the books have overreacted to that and now lined him at 2.5 receptions, which we'll get to later. And here with a 50-yard 3-1 on his receiving yardage. It's happened 3 out of 5 times. Last game was an anomaly. So you can really look at it in 3 out of 4. And the only time he missed it was Western Michigan. They beat him 56-0. He had 3 catches for 45 yards.
Barely missed it.
Give it to me. Give me that 50-plus receiving yards at plus 285. You're going to be 3-1 odds on that. That's appalling. That's offended.
That's a good one.
And I will go with Caden Durham as my number 2, my secondary ladder play, even though that's my number 1 with Tate. Durham at 80.5 rushing yards, which, as we stated, he got 21 carries for 101 last week against Arkansas, is clearly taken over the reins as the RB1 in that room. 80 rushing yards, you're going to get, again, plus 290, almost 3-1 odds at 80.5, 80 plus. I think that's a pretty good deal. And as stated, Texas A&M 117th in allowing explosiveness on the ground.
Those are our ladder plays. Hopefully we win a ton of cash. I'm excited about this segment because I think it allows me to think a little bit bigger, right? More than just a minus 110. Before we get into the Big Ten games of the week, I just want to let you know this Saturday, number 3, Penn State continues their quest for a national title as they travel to Camp Randall for a showdown with Wisconsin. Coverage of the battle starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Oh, wow. First game. It's funny because I see Eric's play and I feel like he advocated for something similar to this and kind of crushed it. Number 3, Penn State, traveling to Camp Randall, like I said, take on Wisconsin. 6.5-point favorite, total set at 47.5. NBC and Peacock game, 7:30 p.m. this Saturday. I'm a pass. I actually don't even have much for this game because I wonder if it was going to be a look-ahead spot with Ohio State on the calendar. You want to talk about the history between these two teams. Penn State's won the last 5, 16-10, 22-10, 38-31 was a Big Ten championship, 31-24, and 24-21. It's a different Wisconsin team. They're starting to have success on the ground again with Tyree Walker, but I don't know if it's enough to remain competitive. I pass on this. Eric, go ahead and tell me why you like Ty Warren.
Why do I like Ty Warren? Well, because I happened to go and attend that USC Penn State game, and I saw him catch 17 of 20 receptions the last time he took the field for 224 yards and a touch. He even got a carry. He's even getting carries.
Yeah, 4 straight games.
Dude, he's doing a little bit of everything, Mr. Tyler Warren, which is why I'm perplexed, guys. They're playing Wisconsin's an important game. They're going to have to go and compete. It's not like they're going to go out and just throw on the easy listening and cruise through this one. That's not going to happen. They're going to need Tyler Warren. And now that they're not doing that silly Warren, Tyler Johnson, dueling tight ends thing of 2023, it's Tyler Warren and it's everybody else now. I am perplexed that we're getting a 4.5 receptions line on Tyler Warren. Give me the over on Tyler Warren. And we're going to hear about this again. This isn't the last time you've heard about this particular play for this show. We're going to save it for when we get later on for the best bets. But I love Tyler Warren over 4.5 receptions in a game where they're going to have to compete on the road against a good Wisconsin team that's had a good, run over the past couple of weeks after getting beat by USC. This is going to be a competitive game. They're going to need Warren. 4.5 receptions, beyond excited for.
Yeah, definitely think this game's going to be a grind. I think the possessions are going to be very heavy here. Penn State, this seems like a game where James Franklin and company could just let slip. Like right before the Ohio State game, your season's on the line with Ohio State, and you just lose this game. You lose Ohio State the next, and then next thing you know, your entire season comes down to how you finish the final few games. So I'm kind of scared to play Penn State on the spread. I do think we get a lot of Ty Warren, but historically speaking, Penn State has handled Wisconsin. Like they've won 5 straight, 7 of the past 8. Camp Randall, absolutely a tough place to play. one of the best things about the NBC game, the Peacock game, will be the jump around when that happens, and hopefully it's a close game when that happens. But nobody has scored. Only 2 teams have scored 12 or more points on Penn State this year. Penn State's defense is elite. So I like Wisconsin team total under 21.5. It was juiced at -150 when I saw it in most places, but it's obviously a key number. I mean, the last 2 times Wisconsin has played Penn State, they scored 20 combined points. So I don't think the Badgers' offense has gotten that much better in the last few times they played, in my opinion, Brad.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like they were caught off guard with that early Woody Marks touchdown against USC. Let's move to the next one. Number 20, Illinois at number 1, Oregon. Oregon is a 21.5 point favorite, total set at 54.5. And I believe strongly that Dan Lanning should be thrown in jail. Last game was a props better nightmare if you bet any overs. First and foremost, Terrence Ferguson announced pregame that he's going to be out, injured, maybe rested, probably. Jordan James at halftime was put on ice, right? Another issue where you're like, what the heck is happening? Then later, Evan Stewart's out of the game. Then Tez Johnson. They're only up by like 20, 21 points at this time. But, there's bigger things, bigger fish to fry than blowing teams out, and they're playing against Purdue. Now they play against Illinois. I lean Illinois in this game. It just feels like Dan Lanning is more on a mission this season to, make sure his squad is healthy and ready for this long schedule. You have to remember, like, the 12-game playoffs, right? Like 12-team playoffs, there's more games that are going to be on your schedule, and you don't want your team to wear out there. That's the only reason I kind of think that, at times it's not about blowing teams out at all, right? Like, those days are gone. You don't have to, like, there's only 4 teams on this that make the playoffs. We have to have style points. You're the number 1 team in the country. Just win out. Even if you lose that Big Ten championship game, it's fine. You'd rather be healthy for that. Eric, I want to pose you a question. Oregon sitting about the second favorite to win the national championship. Would you pick them, or would you like to go with Georgia? Or I'll give you the option of the field.
Oh yeah, I kind of like the field a little bit. This has been the any given Saturday season.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was kind of concerned about how the transfer portal and the NIL is going to affect everything, but rather than have everything sort of concentrated in the same place and just the same 5 or 6 programs, we're seeing other teams have hope, and they can go out and get players. And if you have the money, you can go out and get them. And there's only so many starting quarterbacks, only so many starting running backs. So there's going to be opportunity for talented guys who can't get on the field right away to go elsewhere. You can't get on the field at Alabama right away. All right, well, let's go to Vanderbilt, or let's go to Mississippi State, whatever it is. And that is sort of breeding the parity that we're seeing here. So I would take the field. Maybe I'm out of line, but I like the open nature of this. And with 12 teams, upsets galore can happen.
Yeah, I think we are going to see a lot of that. And something that Brad spoke on about teams not needing style points. I think you only need style points if you've been upset already once or twice.
Yep.
Then you need style points, because when you're being compared to someone else and you're going to be the 10, 11, or 12 seed, then you may need to be, I might have beat this team by 20, 30 compared to someone else beating them by 10. But, that's down the line. Oregon doesn't have to worry about that. Illinois, they do. Illinois, they lose this game, they're done. So that's why I kind of lean them here at 21.5. But you look at trends. Oregon is 0-3 against the spread as a favorite at home this year. But those first 2 games against Idaho and Boise State, they weren't really who they truly were. So you've seen them come defensively. They made the big stop against Ohio State. They shut down Purdue after they had the best offensive showing of the season. I would slightly lean the under here, but it'd be a second half under because of what you said, Brad. Dan Lanning purely is trying to be healthy. When the college football playoff comes around, it does not matter about blowing teams out for him now because they beat Ohio State. So I lean Illinois here. I'd probably take a live bet to the under in the second half, though.
Yeah, I thought the player props were interesting from that Oregon game last week.
Go ahead, Dylan Gabriel, under 292.5, baby.
Finished
right,
290,
yep,
goes
right
over his
there.
closing line.
Yep, under 35.5
a
pass
bit.
attempts too was a nice line.
Evan Stewart smashed his. Evan Stewart smashed his. He was like, I think he finished with 90-something yards, and then Tez Johnson was on super pace, and then he ended up not cashing. So, like, you can still make money off of these. You just got to be on the right side and have a little bit of luck. Let's talk about a team who maybe had a little bit of bad luck here, and that's number 13, Indiana. Washington at number 13, Indiana. Total is 53.5. The Hoosiers, -6.5 spread favorite. Curtis Rourke injured indefinitely. I think he's gonna be back in a couple games. Had successful surgery on his hand. I actually think that Indiana can still be successful this season, right? Like this is a team that's playing really well. Kurt Signetti playing with coaching with a lot of confidence. Number one in the country in offensive success rate. Number 2 in EPA margin. Number 28th in defensive EPA margin. Maybe this game screams under when I talk about it, right? Like I saw a crazy stat about Washington and like how few passing yards they allow. It's a little skewed. They did play a couple of non-passing teams, right? Rutgers, Michigan, the list goes on. But we'll see if that translates because right now, 7th in the country in defensive success rate against the pass. I'm a pass on this. I lean Indiana under a touchdown. You saw what Indiana was able to do against Nebraska, right? They were a touchdown favorite against Nebraska. They covered with ease. Like they made covering look like they were born to do it. V-Money, what do you like in this game?
Yeah, I mean, last week, I want to call it an anomaly, but, when Matt Rule talked about the game, he's like, usually you see these type of things coming, and I did not see this type of beatdown happening. And I don't think many people saw there being that. I mean, the total in that game was, 52.5, 55?
Yep.
Indiana scored 56 themselves. That right there says a lot about a team, but Curtis Rourke being out makes this tough to handicap. College game day is there. That gives Indiana and their fans a lot to go home about, a lot to be excited about for this game to get up without Rourke, to be honest. They're going to be run dependent, but they can run the ball. What I'm worried about, though, is the Huskies. I'm on their win total under. It's starting to get sweaty. I think we'll be good here. But I think the biggest factor of this game, Eric, is Washington playing this noon Eastern kickoff on their time zone. That's going to affect them because most of the games they played in the Big Ten on the road have been 3:30 kickoffs, NBA season. 3:30 kickoff. So I think that affects Washington here. I'd probably play Indiana early because they'll be excited with college game day. Probably have a nice script coming out without their quarterback, but certainly Washington would probably be a better live bet in this game. I like the under, though, as my best bet.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as somebody who's done that West Coast to East Coast time zone travel before, it affects me.
Yeah.
Sure does. Yeah, absolutely. With Indiana, man, 35 point per game scoring margin. That is number 1 in the country.
Dang.
How can it not be 35 points a game they're winning by? That still just staggers me. 6-1 against the spread. What more can you say? I mean, they're just dominating in the offense. Watching the Kurt Signetti offense is so unusual because you'll see their cadence, their pre-snap cadence. They're clapping 6, 7, 8, 9 times with their no voice cadence. They just go by the clap, and it looks like it looks like the quarterback's one of the fans. They're just sitting there clapping just the whole time while they're waiting to get. And then they'll send a back in motion. They'll do this. There's all types of pre-snap stuff that's happening designed to read what the defense is doing. So because they do that, because you don't know which clap. A lot of times, it's college. They set up, clap, and it's snapped, and you can time that. Like you can't time the snap on Indiana. They're clapping 7, 8, 9 times. You have no idea which one's the real snap. So it really suppresses the ability for defensive lines to pressure them, and it is borne out. They only have a 17% pressure rate allowed, Indiana, offensively. That is the second best in the FBS. But now they have Taven Jackson. So last game he came in, he went 8 for 9. And the only incompletion he had was a blatant drop against Nebraska's second team, of course. But this Indiana team, number 1 in passing success rate. I mean, there's a lot to like about this offense. And obviously running the ball, too. They have a two-headed monster with Tyson Lawton and Justin Ellison. Justin Ellison's had a touchdown in every single game this year. So, I mean, they're just right as rain. The play I like, though, is actually going to be Washington. Now, what they do offensively, we know they're good, but they're not great. Like what the identity of this team is their pass defense. It's one of the absolute apex best in the country, but offensively, they're good. 19th in success rate, 44th in EPA per play, but they're better in the open field than when they're in scoring position. A brutal 118th in points per scoring opportunity, only a 50% red zone touchdown rate. What they do is they throw all the time. 73% completion rate for Will Rogers. With Indiana, incredible run defense. And they do excellent in terms of suppressing big plays through the air. but they're allowing a 61% completion rate. That is 77th in the country. Now, with Washington, when they're throwing the ball, you have two options primarily. You have Denzel Boston on the outside, who's their big play threat, but then their slot receiver is Giles Jackson. And when they need to move the ball and they're not going downfield, they're doing the short, quick hitches, slants, and manufactured screens. They're going to Jackson. Last game, 9 catches against Iowa on 14 targets. Previous game against Michigan, 4 of 7. Against Rutgers, 7 of 10. Northwestern, 3 of 6. But then Washington State, 8 of 8. He's getting pounded with targets against Indiana in a game where they're going to have a script. Chances are they're going to be behind, most likely, and they're going to have to be even throwing more with that 73% completion rate. Giles Jackson over 5.5 receptions. Love it. Think that's absolutely going to happen.
I like that play a lot. I wanted to give a quick shout out, Brad, before we move on to the next game, because that offense you spoke about with all the clapping you guys talked about, that was created in 2015 at my alma mater of IUP. That was my sophomore year there. I mean, they had a quarterback, Lenny Williams, who transferred from Temple. They called it their new spread offense, and the guy literally had like 504 yards in their first game inducting that offense. And I think they had like 6 or 7 like the other team jumped offside 6 or 7 times. So it's like, brutal. Yeah, that's when Cignetti was truly born, was 2015. So I love to see that you bring that up, almost 10 years later. That's awesome. And now I feel old too.
Still rolling. Yep.
But let's move over to another game, a team that possibly might have a look-ahead spot. Nebraska at number 4, Ohio State. Ohio State, 25.5 point favorite. Total set at 48.5. The Buckeyes have Penn State next week. I have a strong lean here. And I say strong lean because I'm probably going to lock this in. I just think the total set at a favorable number on Ohio State at the 37.5 points. It might sound high, right? Like you're like Ohio State, they have Penn State next week. But I think that actually helps them a little bit in terms of the complacency is not going to come offensively, right? Like when Ohio State has struggled early in games, a la the Marshall game, it wasn't offensively. It was defensively where they had the lapses. Their offense has been humming. They've been able to run the ball. Their running backs totals are already in the 70s in Quishon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Their wide receiver totals, who probably aren't going to play the whole game, in Jeremiah Smith at 75.5 and Emeka Ibuka at 74.5. Carl Tate, what is he, 30-something.5? Like, these guys, they're going to throw the ball, right? Like, they're going to run the ball. They're going to score a ton of points. Number 1 in EPA margin. That's number 2 on defense, number 3 on offense. Going against the Nebraska side who, they've been okay, right? Like, I feel like with Nebraska, they had this early season hype, and we become victims of the moment. They were really good against lesser competition, but then we remember, they have a true freshman under center. What happens? What happened to him? Mistakes, inability to extend plays, inability to move the chains. Well, when you play against Ohio State on the road in the shoe at noon, the Buckeyes love the noon kickoff. You're in trouble. I think the Buckeyes run this one up. The spread has moved actually almost an entire point in favor of the Buckeyes. But I just think the team total over 37.5 is something you have to consider. And I'm probably going to bet it. I just want to shop it around and be a smart bettor. Eric, you touched on Carnell Tate's receiving yards over. I see you like his receptions. Talk to me why you like over 2.5.
I think his reception is even better than the 50.5 on at 3-1 in terms of hitting. All right. So each of the previous 4 games heading into last week against Oregon, Carnell Tate has caught 3, 4, 3, and 4 passes. So he's caught 3 passes every single game, at least heading into last week. Like I said, 37 receiving snaps. That's as many as Ibuka and Jeremiah Smith. He played every single snap out there, did not come off the field. No one else did. He is out there. He is a legitimate starter who's out there. This is an anomaly. He caught 1 pass for 13 yards last game. Every single other game, he's going for at least 3, and you're going to line him at 2.5 receptions. This is an overreaction to last week's game against Oregon, who has an exceptional defense, and this is what's going to happen. He's going over 2.5 yards like he has every other game. The outlier is an outlier. Go and get that money at 2.5 receptions over Carnell Tate.
And I'll say, I think that if you want to get involved with Ohio State, Brad, I'd probably do it in the first half more than the full game.
Okay.
I'm thinking that Ohio State probably doesn't have to go, full foot on the gas pedal here,
Yeah.
or whatever the phrase is that I can't remember right now. But I think that Ohio State is a good fade in the third or fourth quarter here. Like at halftime, Ohio State's up by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I'm grabbing Nebraska, but I do respect Matt Rule. I mean, what he was saying post game, and then as a look ahead to Ohio State, he was talking about we don't want to be blown out. We don't want our season that started off so well go down the drain so quick, essentially. And I think this is the best Nebraska program we've seen in a while. I just respect him a lot for not having success in the NFL, going to a college program that wants to get back to their form from 20 years ago and be able to get people excited enough to think that they're getting to that point. So I think Nebraska's a great live better if you get them at 28. That 4 touchdown number is a key number there. But at 24, 25, I don't think I want involved in this one.
Vaughn, man, I am so glad you said that. I can really get down with that. Their first half total is set at 20.5, about minus 115. They're averaging 22 points scored in the first half per game, 21.8 at home, 3 touchdowns. Like, that's really doable.
To be honest with you, I kind of ruined our mindset with that team early in the season with the first quarter, first half, because when I took that first quarter over bet and they only scored 1 touchdown and loss, we never went back to that. Yeah. They became one of the best first quarter and first half scoring teams in the country. It was just the first game of the season they did not go over. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk you off. Like I said, that's the angle I would take with look ahead spots. It's always better to back teams in the first half, in my opinion, rather than the full game.
Awesome. Well, let's move to the next one. Get a little long in the tooth here. Don't want people to fall asleep. Want them to make some money. Michigan State at Michigan. Michigan total is 40.5. Michigan, a 3.5-point favorite. Night game on NBC and Peacock. I can't bet this game. I can't in full confidence bet this game because I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for Michigan. I am passing.
All the numbers are gone. The best numbers. I mean, we talked about this last week actually as a little bit of a look ahead because I asked you, I said I like Michigan State first half team total over against Iowa. They end up winning that game. I said maybe they could upset them, but tough to see them, winning that game and beating Michigan next week. It was 6.5 points as a spread. Now it's 3.5. The total was 48.5. Now it's 40.5. So it's really hard to make a case to back Michigan State at these current numbers, but it's also hard to back Michigan, period, because there's so much uncertainty and they haven't looked good. Michigan State's only going to get better as the season goes on. And Michigan, it's kind of at the point, like, not what are they playing for, Eric? You're obvious there's a point to your season, but everything you came into the season hoping for and expecting is kind of out the window now. So I still think Michigan State is probably the bet you should be making. But, like I said, all the best numbers are gone here.
Yeah, the time to take Michigan State was early in the week. Hell, the time to take Michigan State was when Michigan in the early, super early look ahead lines in the spring. After spring, they post some select game. Do you know what this game opened up at?
16.5.
Way look ahead.
16.5.
24.5.
Woo!
What?
Oh my God.
Opened back in April on the initial, way early look ahead lines. They opened at 24.5 Michigan, and it's down to 3.5 now. So that tells you pretty much all you need to know about what has happened with the hangover for Michigan in terms of that national championship line. Because I wrote this game up, as Brad, you mentioned, on Monday, because this is a Friday night game, or it should be the Saturday night game. This is a Peacock. 5.5 points when I wrote it up, down to 3.5 already. This is in just a few hours. I just sort of sent it over. That's a problem. I would have loved the Michigan State line, as we talked about. The earlier you got it, the better. But now it's down to 3 in the hook. I have to stay away from that. That being said, the 40.5 over under, which is also, as Tim mentioned, our stellar producer, has dropped 8 points since Monday. I gotta think at 40.5, like, you can't get over that. Michigan State. I lean the over at 40.5. It's so embarrassingly, ridiculously low. Yeah. And these teams will turn the ball over, which then can create points and lead to that. I lean holding my nose and going over in this game, but you gotta have a cast iron stomach, I would suppose, to take it in this situation. So it's just a lean.
Yeah, we're good on that. Let's put a bow on that. And before we move into my favorite segment, the People's Parlay, I have to tell you that two storied franchises renew their rivalry on Sunday night. Find out if Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can get back on track after their bye week when they face off against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Coverage of that matchup starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Well, it's time for the People's Parlay. I'll tell you ahead of time that $10 pays close to $52. Eric, what's your first leg of the People's Parlay?
Well, I want to give credit to our friends over there at Utah State. Just total disarray over there. We don't know what we're getting. Coach resigns. Interim coach not doing so well. They have, in my estimation, the worst run defense in the country and a bottom 5 defense. On the other side, they're playing Wyoming, who, in my estimation, has one of the 3 worst pass defenses in the country. And we know that Utah State, if there's anything they can do, it's throw. And are just breeding overs, these two teams. I'm looking at this and saying, we have 2 of the absolute apex worst defenses in the country. Utah State has been just an absolute over machine. They can score points. They give up points at a pretty reasonable 56.5 points. I think this is an over waiting to happen. Neither of these teams can play defense. I'm taking the over 56.5 points between Utah State and Wyoming.
I don't understand this line. UCF has a little bit of success against Iowa State, and all of a sudden, they open up as the favorite in this game. Now a 1-point dog to BYU. I could call, if you call us a trap, I'm jumping in, right? I'm the rat. You got me by the tail. I smelt the cheese because I'm eating a full plate of BYU Cougar. I think they dominate in this game. Number 1, first and foremost, I think they dominate in the trenches. Number 2, I think they don't make mistakes. Number 3, I think that game against Oklahoma State, where they faced so much adversity, first and foremost, coming back not once, but twice in that game, 11 seconds to go on the clock. They score a touchdown to eventually take the lead and win the game against a UCF team that's still in disarray. Blowing that game against Iowa State, I think, did more harm than good, right? Like, they should have won that game. I'm going BYU in this one.
Yeah, I absolutely hate that play, but I'll root for it. Smells so sticky. I don't want to touch it. But honestly, so does this game. I'm taking Colorado. Buffalo's on the money line at home against Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati's 2 losses have been by less than a field goal. I mean, Colorado's played some tough games too. Their only loss outside of Nebraska was the Kansas State. They got a bye week next week, the Buffaloes, so they definitely want to get healthier and get better here. So I agree with you, Brad. I mean, your game smells a little odd too. So does mine. But honestly, this season, it's been tough. And I think down the stretch, these lines are very, very sharp. So we will see. But $10 pays out $52.64 for us. So let's cross our fingers and get a winner. Utah State, Wyoming over, BYU money line, and Colorado money line. Let's get it.
This is the stinky people's parlay. We
Yeah,
only get
seriously.
paid when it's stinky. We're gonna go over our the rest of the bets and then end with our favorite bets. You were on Colorado. I'm on Colorado minus the 5 here. I tried to beat the number. I tried to jump on 4.5, and it slightly moved on me. That's fine. Why? Because I can't get paid if they win by 4. So there's no difference to me really in the 4.5, the 5. Maybe you get yourself a little extra equity in that. But Colorado playing really good football defensively, playing really good. Been able to kind of stop the run there. I just think that this offense is playing at a high level right now. You know, before it was them playing at a high level, but they couldn't protect the quarterback. Looks like the rhythm of this offensive line starting to get together. It could just be a case of you bring in 5 transfers for your offensive line. They're not going to gel right away, or they're just playing really good football and, you know, they'll come crashing down at some point. I actually want to pick the former, not the latter. I think Colorado cover and win against Cincinnati. Eric, go ahead with your first additional bet.
Yeah, as a USC guy, I've been playing of those games and watching them. And the player that I have really noticed that has come of age over the course of the past few weeks has been wide receiver Makai Lemon. And it just seems like, you know, USC wanted Zachariah Branch to be the potent inside slot receiver threat, tried to force feed him, you know, early in the season, but it just looks like they've almost thrown up their hands and said, all right, well, we're not getting what we wanted out of him outside of the manufactured touches. You know, Branch just isn't getting open downfield. It's just not how they use them. However, their other slot / he moves around, but Makai Lemon over the past couple of weeks has really emerged as being the go-to inside threat against Penn State 2 games ago, which is a 33-30 loss and a really close competitive game. Makai Lemon was just an integral part of the game. 6 of 9 for 73. Last game against Maryland, again, another very hotly contested game, 29-28 loss. Caught all 8 of his targets for 89 yards. Currently, we're seeing Makai Lemon out there at 46.5 receiving yards. He is, pretty much doubled that over the course of the past 2 games against Penn State and Maryland. A couple of good teams here. I feel like Makai Lemon has emerged. He will be targeted, and at 46.5 receiving yards, that just seems way too reasonable for me to say no. I'm going to take over 46.5 on Makai Lemon's receiving yardage.
I have 2 additional plays, but first I wanted to say, I think you guys should consider Eli Holstein's passing over. The game against Syracuse should have a ton of points. I didn't quite get to the window. It's probably just best to play 300 plus at even money. But a bet I did get to the window in another game that I talked about earlier. I have 2 bets from this game. Ja'Cory Brooks over 80.5 receiving yards. He's over in 6 of the 7 so far this season. He is the big chunk play guy. Receptions of 57, 61, 86 this season. Why is that important? Boston College, 69th in defensive success rate. They love giving up the big bombs. I really like this game. Ended 56-28 last year. Another play from this game, I talked about it a little bit, and that's Mr. Tommy Castellanos, over 190.5 passing yards. Crazy value on this line, seeing how most books are almost at the 200 mark. He's hit an over of 3 of his last 4 games, missed in 2 against Florida State at the beginning of the season and Michigan State, who we know we're kind of starting to see a little bit more rhythm, a little bit more vibe from that Michigan State defense. So those are okay for me to cross out and go straight to Castellanos. Let's talk about best bets of the week. I dropped my first best bet since I think the first week of the season. Gross, icky, BYU. I'm going back to fading the Knights. BYU money line is my best bet. Don't need to beat the dead horse. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you, Mr. Eric Froton.
Yeah, gosh, beating dead horse. Nobody wants to do that. We talked about this play earlier in the show. Tyler Warren over 4.5 receptions. I feel like that's a best bet and a worthy one. We've really done pretty well on the show with these reception lines. And obviously we're early in the week and we're taping on a Wednesday, so we don't get that full slate. Very lucky to get this. I see this going to 5.5 by the time the game kicks.
I love how you say we don't want to beat a dead horse, and you go with Tyler Warren, who's going to be the dead horse all season long.
There's nothing dead about him. He is a very virile, masculine, muscular horse. God, dead horse. No.
True. As far as me, I'm hoping that we see a dead under on Saturday, the kickoff for College Game Day. I'm going under 53.5 as my best bet. Washington, Indiana, no Curtis Rourke. It's going to be a slightly different team for Indiana. They're going to be more run dependent here. Washington playing at that 9 a.m. Pacific kickoff, 12 p.m. Eastern. It's going to affect them in some ways, and I don't have much confidence in their offense either. So under 53.5, Washington, Indiana, my best bet.
Well, fellas, as always, this was great. Everyone listening, thank you so much. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching us on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. As a reminder, find your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. For Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell, I'm Brad Thomas. Thank you for watching and enjoy the sweats.